Hello everyone, this is Charles1K92 here, also known as GM65, off on the PlayStation Store network. Hello again. Okay, so we're now coming ever more closer to the Kingdom Hearts 3 release date. Well, day of release, however you want to put it. So, last time we spoke about Kingdom Hearts Coded or Recoded. And now we're slowly making our way down to this game. It's another Nintendo DS title that came out. And was developed by Hand, published by Square. Director is Tetsuya Nomura and Tomohiro Hasegawa, I think it is. Hasegawa, Gawa, however it is. Okay, so the game in question that we're talking about is Kingdom Hearts 358 by 2 Days. This game is mainly featured around Roxas's time during the organisation. Relatively speaking, almost a year of him being inside the organisation and what he does there. So, how did Roxas come into being is the question. Now, I'm pretty sure I went over this, but we'll go over it again. So, Roxas is the nobody of Sora, meaning that he is Sora's other half. So, how a nobody is created, if a person in question has a strong will and a strong heart, be they evil or good, if they end up becoming a Heartless, so they have a Heartless that gets made. So, boom, the Heartless is here. If they have a very strong will in the beginning, no matter if they're good or bad, a nobody is created as an outcome. Meaning that this nobody, whose heart has been stolen away, acts on a will on its own. Now, the basics of both two of these mob factions is a Shadow Heartless and a Dusk. A Dusk is basically the white jumpsuit creature that Roxas first faced during the events of Kingdom Hearts 2 on his summer vacation. And it's a reoccurring enemy that Sora faces during the events of Kingdom Hearts 2 and will inevitably be facing in Kingdom Hearts 3. Anyway, however, there's rare exceptions to this rule. This rule's rare exception is this: if you're very strong-willed, if you're very strong enough on either side, instead of a Dusk, you retain your body as a sense. So, how do I put this? Well, if we take a look at, let's say, the organization's leader, Xemnas, and the Ansem Seeker of Darkness, Ansem is technically the Heartless of Xehanort's, Xemnas' real body, or technically Xehanort's body. Because technically these two guys, if they brought back together, form Xehanort. Form one person. It's the same for every member that forms the organization's ranks, which are 13 of them, going from Xemnas all the way to Roxas. Now then, that's how Roxas was born. Now, Roxas was born when Sora sacrificed his heart to rescue Kairi during the events of Kingdom Hearts 1. Now, the moment he done this, Roxas was created or arrived at in Twilight Town, somewhere near the mysterious mansion. Xemnas found him, and Xemnas spoke to him first, not Axel. He then bequeathed Roxas his name. He showed his real name as Sora, but chose to give him his new name, which was Roxas, by giving him an X and rearranging the letters in his name. Roxas was born. He was then given off to Axel for safekeeping and for looking after. Now, we're going to go through the hierarchy as it sense of the members of the organisation, since it's not necessarily hard to find out of organisation 13. Alright, so then, we'll go through the organisation as quickly as we can and see what it is, see what we can get. Starting off with because they use Roman numerals for their numbering, so that's the best way to tell the difference between each member. So we'll start off with the leader, the superior of the organisation, and he has been known to be called this as such from the underlings of his own organisation. So the number one and the superior of the in-between, which is what his title is none other than Xemnas. Now, Xemnas actually appeared as a secret boss during the events of Kingdom Hearts 1 Final Mix. You can actually face Xemnas during the events of where you go back into Castle of Hollow Bastion's castle, where you face Maleficent. And basically Xemnas laments to Sora back then that he's not really complete, he's only at half strength, and that his other self is elsewhere, to an extent. Anyway, moving down to the next list. So he is the superior of the in-between, and he is the nobody of, and this will be relevant when we talk about Birth by Sleep, he is the nobody of somebody called Terranaut. Alright? That means the Heartless is Ansem. So the Heartless and the Nobody, when they come back together, they form up a being known as Terranaut, which, what we know at this moment, what I'm telling you, is to be none other than apprenticed Xehanort, who is the apprentice of Ansem the Wise. So trying to make this easy, Xehanort that we know about is actually known by another name called Terranaut. Terranaut is a separate character from Xehanort, and his real name will be spoken about when we get to Birth by Sleep, because I'm telling you, when we get closer to Dream Drop Distance, the whole story goes everywhere to an extent. But just keep that in mind for later reference. The next organisation member, the organisation's number 2, is none other than Xigbar. Now, he was once a guardsman at a place called Radiant Garden, because that's what he was originally, and he worked with Xehanort, and he helped form the organisation that we know from the events of Kingdom Hearts 2. Now, he bears the title of the Free Shooter. That's his title in the organisation, technically. He's able to fire bullets which are magic and are imbued with darkness, and they're basically his arrow guns that can become a sniper rifle, and he has the ability to command space and gravity, and he can teleport himself. So that's his ability. Xemnas can technically do the same thing, but Xemnas commands the realm of nothingness, and he also, still talking about Xemnas, his weapons are called ethereal blades. They're basically like lightsabers that he can call from his hands. Anyway, moving down to the third member. The third member of the organisation is Xaldin. Now, he is well known as the Whirlwind Lancer, or the Whirlwind Lance, because he wields lances as his weapons, and he can wield up to 6 of them. So he can hold 3, so 2 in one hand, 1 in the other, and the other 3 are held up in the air. He commands the wind, and he can use it to be as not just as a shield, but also as an offensive weapon. Moving on, the organisation's number 4. Vexen, basically a scientist, but he's also known as a chilled alchemist, I think is the title that he was given. The weapon that he's able to use is a shield, so he can use a shield to defend himself, and he's also able to command the ability of ice. But he also has another value. Because he's also a scientist of the organisation, and he was a scientist when he was known as Evan, because he was part of the Radiant Garden crew, so the first 6 members are all part of the Radiant Garden crew that portrayed Ansem the Wise. That's the first 6 only. But Evan was more scientisty. So he was able to study things a little bit more, he was able to understand things a bit more, and think more complexity. So he was able to create a few things. He actually was able to create a Riku replica during the events of Chain of Memories, and he was also able to create another replica of Sora, but went by the code name Xion. So it is a girl. She is part of the organisation, but we won't get to her just yet. Next up is known as Lexaeus. Lexaeus is the 5th member of the organisation and the 5th founder of the organisation. Now he is tactical student. No, not really. That's not really his thing. He's basically called the Silent Hero, is what his nickname is from the English translation, a bit more better. So he's known as the silent hero. Mainly he doesn't talk as much, but when he does, it's actually quite important to listen to him because he seems to have some form of wisdom. His main weapon of choice is more or less like a hammer/sword, and the element that he can mainly command is the element of the earth. So basically he can summon the ground to an extent. He's also able to generate a lot of power as well. Now during the events of Kingdom Hearts 2, if you faced his silhouette and his data version, this is actually on the final mix variant, he's able to boost his power up, and Sora can borrow and tap into this power to overpower him in a sense. But the more powerful he gets, he can one-hit kill you if he was able to. Next we get onto the final founder, Zexion. Now Zexion was actually the most youngest of Ansem the Wise's apprentices, being a small boy. He was like Evan in some sense of his intellect. He was very quiet originally, but he became something else when he joined the organization's, nobody group. And that was, he was known as the quote schemer. He was more the thinker, the tacticianer of the organization. Always plotting, always planning, and always sneaking around. He has the ability to command the illusions. So he's able to cast illusions and change people's perspective of what they can deem as a reality and what they can deem as an illusion. He's also able to sense things. So he's more of a sensory person, meaning that he's able to smell out the darkness out of anybody, and he's also able to detect the light of people as well. So he was able to tell during the events of Castle Oblivion that he was able to sense that Sora was in the castle. He was also able to sense when Riku was in the castle, and also a fake Maleficent as well. Now, those are the 6 founders, the 6 people who betrayed Ansem the Wise and continued research which should have been better left forgotten, but caused all of them to lose their hearts and become nobodies and basically start the organisation from there. Their main goal is to achieve Kingdom Hearts and to become whole again, but there is an ulterior motive which I'm going to suggest only 2 members really know what's going on, and that is technically Xemnas and Xigbar. They're the only 2 members of the organisation who know what the true plans are, but the remaining 11 have no idea. This plan will be elaborated on in Dream Drop Distance. Moving on to the 7th member. The 7th member is the first member of the organisation to be recruited in. So, you have the 6 founders, they've started, but they knew they need more than just 6. They needed to have 13, so they started to find people. The first member to officially join, not of their free will I might add, but probably against their will, because when you think about it, if you're going to be turned into a Heartless, it's not going to be good for you, because you don't know what's going to happen. This person is known as Saïx. His true self, is known as Isa, and a resident of Radiant Garden. He goes by the name of the Lunar Diviner, meaning that he has the ability to somewhat see the moon as divinity, I guess. His weapon of choice is a claymore. The claymore is a type of sword. However, obviously in Kingdom Hearts they can't have a proper sword, so it has to be kind of really bulked out and made very heavy. Anyway, the claymore has somewhat of a secondary effect. It can actually produce small amounts of flames, but it also has this other thing, only special to Saïx. Saïx is able to call down on the powers of moon, or the moon in question. So he absorbs the rays of the moon in a sense, and once he is fully charged, he goes into a Berserk Rage mode. This Berserk Rage mode doesn't last very long, but it can dish out a lot of damage. This causes Saïx's appearance to turn more feral, more like a werewolf in a sense. And his weapon also changes from a very not so threatening look to a very deadly look. So spikes are protruding everywhere, damage is more. If he doesn't hit you and he hits the ground, an area of effect of small flames will come out, and so on. And able to throw the weapon like a spear, it will impale itself on the ground, but it will disappear and reappear in his hand. Somewhat similar to a Keyblade, I guess, but I'm going to assume any member of the organisation will have the ability to summon their weapon if their weapon was just thrown away from them. Anyway, the next member of the organisation is none other than the main man himself, is Axel. Now, his real personality is known as Lee. That's his real name, and he is actually friends with Isa. And when they were nobodies, Axel and Saïx were close friends, technically. So he was the second member of the organisations to join. Now, He is the organization's resident assassin and is entrusted with killing the group, well, any groups of traitors. He's also best friends and mentor to Roxas, whose relationship with him enables Axel to re-experience human emotions. Now, his known nickname was the Flurry of Dancing Flames because Axel's element is the element of fire. He wields 2 chakrams and he is very good at what he does. He lies consistently. He's very talented at killing people and killing things. The best example is when he killed Vexen, the first member of the organisation to fall and die, was by Axel's hand, no less. Or better still, a Thanos snap. Basically telling Vexen that, you know, your time's over, basically. Gone. Moving on to the organisation's number 9. This guy is actually coming back in Kingdom Hearts 3 as as the member of the organisation again. This person is known as Demyx. Not too sure what his real name is, but some have speculated to be Mydem or Demi or whatever it might be. It's very hard to kind of figure out what people are called. But we don't know, so we might know in Kingdom Hearts 3. Now, this guy, he's more of a reconnaissance. He doesn't like to go out and fight. He's not a fighter. He's more of a chicken than a combatant. But he's not to be trifled with. The weapon of choice that he uses is none other than a sitar, a musical instrument. But he also commands the ability of water. What he's able to do if he was pushed into a combat situation is he'll start playing his sitar and summon water that might be in the surrounding area, or he can produce it because it's a magic effect, and he's able to produce water clone nobodies. These nobody clones are very weak on their own. One hit will transition them into a phase where they're stuck and they're bouncing around. Another phase is where they're still standing and they can attack. Now, in both of these phases where they're either stuck or they're standing, they can still hit you. On their own, it's not that bad. But in a group, they can do a lot of damage to you and potentially kill you if you're not caught on guard. Their weakness, surprisingly enough, is fire. I know that might sound strange, but if you use fire spells on these water droplets, I would assume they just evaporate. So the fire must be very hot in order for these guys just to fizzle out. Anyway, he is basically a chicken, as I said. He doesn't like to get involved in any fighting at all, and he always tries to duck out on missions if he's ever sent out on them. Most notably, Roxas and him went out together to do some reconnaissance on the world, and Demyx just went off. He just disappeared. He said, you know what, you've got this. I will go somewhere else. I will look somewhere else. You stay here. You do what you got to do. If there's anything wrong, just deal with it. Okay? I will be over there, minding my own business. Basically, what he's saying is that he's going to be laying around somewhere, falling asleep, while Roxas went to do all the work. Anyway, so that's Demyx. He's lazy. Next we've got Luxord. We don't know his real name, but he's also called by a nickname known as the Gambler of Fate. Now, he speaks rhetorically, and he always has a gaming metaphor. He always thinks life is a game. Everything's a game to him, everything's up for grabs, everything's a gamble, everything's either worth something or not worth it at all. He can put everything on the line, or he won't. So that's like a gamble. It's a gambler's thing. He is technically a gambler. His weapons of choice are cards and dice. He uses them to his effect, and his ability is through time. He can use time to aid him or go against him in a sense. Don't know why he would make it go against himself, but he would always have it on his side. He's able to slow down time. He can stop time. He can be quick. He can be slow. It depends on his situation. He's able to trap you in a sort of like game of chance, and for you specifically, to you, time around you will look like it's stopped, but to everyone else it'll be a second. That's how it would work. He's also able to trap people in cards. He can put himself into a card. He can create cards that can explode. He can create cards that can transform your character into a card or to a dice, and that's generally how it works. Next is the organisation's number 11, Marluxia. Now we know of his real name. I think it's Lumarium, I think is his real name. He's also known as the Graceful Assassin. Now technically speaking, the organisation has an assassin, and that is Axel. But Why call Marluxia the Graceful Assassin? Well, I reckon he and Axel must have worked together before, let's say, the events of Chain of Memories. They didn't assassinate any other members as of until that point. They probably went over and got rid of people who might have been following on their trail. At some point, Xemnas saw Marluxia's, let's say, good work ethic, and said to him, listen, I'm going to give you a castle that we found, which is Castle Oblivion, and you are going to be the overlord ruler of that place. You will be in charge of what goes on there, technically, and you will report to me with anything that happens. Whether there's a traitor in our midst, you must tell me, and if there's anything of interest, you must tell me. Marluxia's like, cool, I'll do that for you. Next up is the organisation number 12, the only female in the organisation at this point. Her name is Larxene. Her name has been apparently, by the time of me doing this recording, her name has somewhat been given out. I don't know what it is, but she does have a true name. It's out there, but you have to play Kingdom Hearts Key to find out. Okay, so she is the organisation's number 12, and she's known as the Savage Nymph. So she's very nympho, apparently. She can be very sexual, I guess. She's a woman. She's, in some form of it, you could say she's attractive. I don't see the attraction. But, yeah, she mainly can play on people's emotions more, because she's a woman, and most men feel, you know, weak when they see a woman, especially if they're fairly young, fairly attractive, and so on. Anyway, she's also been known to be called as the Callous Vixen. I think that's also another term, I guess, of her thing. She's very ruthless and she's sadistic. She's the only female member of the organisation, and she wields a set of knives, and she's also able to command the power of lightning and thunder. Meaning, if you were to face her in combat, she's very quick. She can, I'm not saying she will throw the knives, but it's most probably that you can do that, because they're small. She holds, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, so 8 knives in total, I think she can hold up together. She's able to command the lightning. She can command it down on you. She can cast it around herself to protect herself. She's also able to make them into electrical spheres. She's actually able to energize the lightning in her to produce a secondary version of her, basically a shadow clone of herself in a sense, or a lightning clone. And basically, it's her. But because she's moving so fast, there's 2 of her, or 3 of her, or 4 of her, or 5. And if you have them, if she's attacking you, she can be hitting you one way, but her clone will hit you another way. Or when she's doing a combo move, her original self will do one, her clone will do the next set, and so on and so forth. And she's very deadly if she has a multitude of these, but these can be thrown back into her and disrupt her flow of combat. Especially during the events of Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix when you face her silhouette. Cool? Make sense? Nice. Next up is the organisation's number 13th. Finally, we're at number 13. Roxas is the last member of the organisation to technically join, in a sense, not as a volunteer, but to be found and recruited. He is the 13th member of the organisation. He is a protagonist. He is a protagonist in a sense, because we're playing as him. He is Sora's nobody, and he's also able to. He's also a Keyblade wielder, and he's the only Keyblade wielder in the entire organisation. He's also been known, and he bears the title of the Key of Destiny, because that is his title. The other nicknames that I have gone through with each member are basically titles that they are known by. So, I have never heard the organisation technically mention each of their titles, but their titles are there. You can find them on their bios, I guess, when you read through Gemini's journal, and also Roxas's journal, I think, as well. Anyway, so we basically play as Roxas. He was born during the events of the first game, when Sora became Heartless, as I said, to restore Kairi. He's able to wield a Keyblade, for which he is inducted within the organisation to further their goal of collecting hearts. And he eventually decides to abandon the organisation, and when he discovers his own origins, like who he is. He also serves as the main protagonist in 358 by 2 Days, as I mentioned, which further explores his membership in the organisation until events in Kingdom Hearts 2. So basically, 358 by 2 Days takes place during the events roughly near the end of Kingdom Hearts 1, throughout the events of Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, and before the events of Kingdom Hearts 2. So it's roughly in the middle. There's also another member. Her name is Xion. Xion is basically a clone of Roxas. She is a member. She's number 14 in the organisation, but there's not 14 chairs, only 13 chairs. She doesn't technically have any value to the organisation. She's only a backup just in case if Roxas were to die. That's it. Okay. Now each member of the organisation does command a lesser nobody, but there's no point in me going into it because there's just no point into it at all. So, mainly what happens is this. Roxas is born. Roxas has no idea who he is or what he is at all. He spends his days mainly in the organisation in a zombified state, at least for the first 7 days. But before we get to day 7, he actually speaks to Xemnas. Xemnas, by this time, has already met with Sora in Kingdom Hearts 1 and has already faced him and lost to him. Xemnas actually says he's been to see him and that he looks a lot like you. Kind of, surprise, they are technically the same person to an extent. Roxas doesn't know who he's talking to, so he says, well, who are you? Xemnas says, well, my name's of no importance, you don't need to know. But what about you? Do you know, do you know who you are? Who are you to me? As, thing. Roxas doesn't know how to answer this, and he says, well, you've been with us for I think 6 or 7 days now, so you're telling me you don't know? Nope. And when Xemnas takes off his hood, so we know it's Xemnas, he walks up to Roxas, pats him on the shoulder and whispers, but then is later more vocal, Sora, your name is technically Sora. You are Sora's nobody. Your real name really is Sora, but in the organisation, you're Roxas. You might notice that each member of the organisation has an X in their name, symbolising that they are a member of the organisation, but it's also to symbolise that they have no heart. So it's like a big, huge sign to say no. Saïx's symbol is more or less a big, huge statement because he has a huge X across his face. So it's basically easy to tell that he's a member of the organisation one way or the other. Anyway, so Roxas then spends most of his time with Axel, who shows him roughly the ropes of, let's say, how things work. He then spends his time, Roxas does at least, with other members of the organisation, mainly some of the members that would go off to Castle Oblivion and end up dying at some point. And basically they show him the ropes of reconnaissance, information gathering, which is the same thing, combat, how to deal with situations if you're very low on health and everything else. And then Roxas is left alone. He travels to multiple worlds that Sora would have gone to, and to new worlds that came back after the events of Kingdom Hearts 1, because once the worlds were restored, Kingdom Hearts 2 worlds showed up in the mix. Eventually, Roxas starts to piece together little bits and pieces about what he's supposed to do. Now, the organisation has tasked him to go and collect hearts, and this is how this understanding needs to come to pass. If the organisation member who doesn't have a Keyblade slays a Heartless, an Emblem Heartless to be exact, the heart that comes out isn't fully released. It means it will just go back into the cycle and another Heartless will spawn. That's how it would work. However, if Roxas slays a Heartless, it's different. The heart is truly free. The Keyblade unlocks things. It relieves oppression, I guess, of the heart being held captive by a Heartless. That heart then will wanders around freely until it's either swallowed up by darkness or the nobody in question that the heart originated from was destroyed and they come back together. That's how it works. However, the organisation found a way of actually capturing these hearts that roam free. So they started probably taking hearts from when Sora was going out on his adventures. After when Roxas was created, they probably stopped collecting them, found Roxas, or at least Xemnas did, and they started to use Roxas as a main source of income because eventually Sora would go to sleep for about a year, or a year. So then, Roxas goes and collects hearts every mission. He slays every Heartless, every form of Heartless. There are new forms of Heartless, old forms. Boss Heartless are also a thing as well, so every single time a boss Heartless was destroyed, its heart was bigger, massive, and that would be just taken and placed into an area of the world that never was. At some point, Xemnas had a meeting with all the members of the organisation and says, look there, we now have Kingdom Hearts. It is now within our possession, and we are getting ever so closer to our main goal. Meaning that we're almost there. More hearts are needed, but we're almost there. Anyway, at some point, Xion joins the organisation. She was similar to Roxas in the sense of where she was very quiet, she didn't talk as much. Eventually, at some point, she and Roxas were together. They were paired together, and they both helped each other out. At some point, Xion was known to actually could wield a Keyblade. So it was like, wow, 2 Keyblade wielders, amazing. Makes my job a little bit more easier, less stress. Axel, I think at the meantime, he was away at Castle Oblivion. During those events, Axel stayed very low undercover. He didn't come back for a very long time, and that was due to the fact that he was tying up loose ends, meaning that there would be nothing left in Castle Oblivion for the good guys to find anything of. But because technically Castle Oblivion's own rules, as it were, that in order to get something you have to give up something in return, that still applies. But because the organisation still had power over it, they were able to subjugate this rule so that it wasn't actually compliant to them. They could just do what they wanted to an extent, thanks to the help of Naminé. But if she's gone, which technically at this point she would have been, the castle goes back to its default set. So I guess Axel had to make sure that certain things couldn't be found, to an extent. He came back to the organisation, back to the world that never was. He was very quiet. He never spoke about much of that happened. He said, yeah, things happened. I'm fine. Don't worry about it. This is mainly towards Roxas, by the way. Xion, on the other hand, has been sent out on missions to try and find somebody who's being investigating the organisation, which is none other than Riku. She actually faces Riku at some point and loses to him. Riku then takes a look at her and is somewhat surprised that she looks roughly identical to Kairi. He also picks up her Keyblade and says that this Keyblade is a sham, it's not really real, it's a fake. He even tries to warn Xion that the organisation that she's working with will turn their back on her very quickly. She chooses not to accept this, does what she wants. She does go back to the organisation. Saïx's job also is to organise missions for the group, and is technically second in command. Even though he's number 7 in the organisation, he is Xemnas' number 2 in the command structure. Now eventually Saïx turns around and tells Xion she's a failure, she's worthless, she's practically everything in the book to him that's considered to be worthless, and that she's useless. Xion says, give me another chance, let me do something to prove myself again. Saïx relents, says, yeah, fine, don't care, do this. If you come back alive, then fine. She does eventually. But what she also does do is she leaves the organisation, she disappears. Axel is then tasked by Xemnas and I think Saïx to go and bring her back, because she's technically a secret weapon to the organisation, because she was created by Vexen as a backup just in case if Roxas ever were to die. However, she also has this unique ability. She basically can siphon power out of Roxas. So at some point it dawned on, I'm going to assume Xemnas and Saïx, that we're going to see where this goes. Whether Roxas will be victorious or Xion will. Doesn't really matter, because no matter what will happen, we'll always have a Keyblade wielder as the end result. They have machines set up in multiple different worlds that would siphon, I'm going to assume, memories that Sora had in these worlds that were being focused and funneled into Xion. Because eventually at some point, Sora's memories that were being restored were being halted, because one, Roxas had held a piece of those memories, and technically Xion was siphoning them when she wasn't supposed to. That's why she was suffering a load of personality disorders, I would assume. She even going up to the point where she went unconscious, and Roxas went to her nearly every day. Now, at some point as well, Roxas done this. He kind of got a bit fed up that people weren't mentioning anything about Xion. Not when she was unconscious, but when she actually left the organisation fully. And Roxas was like, well, we need to go and find her. We've searched nearly everywhere, every world, the entire castle that's in their world that they stay in. The only place they didn't go to, which Axel was technically worried about, was Roxas saying, take me to Castle Oblivion. Axel was like, we don't want to go there. No, you do not want to go there. really don't. Full of bad place. Too many Heartless. Can't go. Roxas says, dude, I wield the Keyblade. If there's Heartless there, it helps the organisation. Not saying that's what Roxas would be thinking, but I mean, come on. If there's Heartless and they need slaying, then it's easy. You and I can deal with it. Axel was still saying no, or we're not going. Roxas says, well, tough, I'm still going. If you refuse to help me, which clearly you are, I'll find my own way. Axel gives in then. He says, fine, look, I'll help you. I'll prove to you she's not there. He creates a corridor of darkness. They go to Castle Oblivion. They look at it, they go, right, let's go in. Axel's very apprehensive because there's one thing that he knows. Sora was in there recently. And the memory thing that was playing on Sora's mind can still be in an effect. And Axel knows that Roxas is Sora's nobody. Axel knows that Roxas is Sora's nobody, meaning that technically something can happen if Roxas sets foot in the castle. They go in. Nothing happens straight away. Axel's kind of like, okay, everything must be okay then. And he kind of says, well, look, see, she's not here. And Roxas is like, dude, we're only in the main entrance. We need to go further in. And Axel's like, okay. And then Roxas collapses. He has a huge headache. Roxas is then taken back to Castle Oblivion, not Castle Oblivion, the world that never was his castle. And he's placed in his room, and he's basically unconscious for a certain period of time. Shion, on the other hand, at some point does come back to the organisation. And she basically takes over Roxas' position. She's basically, I'm going to guess she's trying to figure out whether or not the organisation is good or bad, to her, at least. But every day that goes past, she always goes back to a certain world. She picks up a seashell and she gives it back to Roxas, hoping in the event that he will wake up. Now, at one point, both Saïx and Xemnas are in Roxas' room. And they are basically discussing his, where he's at. Saïx says, look, if nothing happens within, let's say, a short period of time, Shion is collecting hearts, is what we want her to do, but she's not really making up the, she's not getting enough. So Xemnas is kind of like, well, how long has he been out for? Been out for a while, so it's like a long time. It's kind of not super long, but a decent amount of time's passed. And Saïx says, well, look, as I said, if he doesn't wake up soon, we might have to eliminate him and step up our other plan, which is Shion. Xemnas agrees and says, well, look, kind of get the groundwork ready for it, but don't do anything straight away. Just set it up so that we only have to do one thing just to get it started. Saïx leaves. Then Xemnas says something very curious. He says, so sleep has taken you once again, my friend. So why is Roxas a friend to him when he doesn't know much about Roxas, except that he's known as Sora, originally, and that he's Sora's nobody? But there is an ulterior motive, because Roxas looks like somebody else, to Xemnas, at least. And then we're going to get to the very end of this. So eventually Shion betrays the organisation full outright. She turns against Xigbar and Axel when they're in Alice in Wonderland's world. And she basically, well, knocks out Xigbar in a sense, one-hit KO. Because she looks like completely somebody else. She looks like Roxas almost, but this is a different Roxas. A Roxas from a different time. She knocks out Xigbar, she runs away, goes. She then spends time with with Diz, Riku, and Naminé. Naminé explains everything to her, and she kind of like accepts that fact. But she says that she cares about Axel, she cares about Roxas, she wants to help them as well. Naminé's, someone says, well, okay, but we don't know how this is going to happen. So she explains the whole fact of what's going on with her memories. She tells her that if you continue to go down this path, you're going to be stopping Sora from waking up. And she doesn't really care, but then she slowly does. And Axel is then been told by Saïx that you are going to go and bring Shion back here. No ifs, no ands, no buts. She's coming back. Whether she's awake or not doesn't matter. She's coming back here now. Axel's like, but she's no, you and I are friends. Our friendship is more real compared to the fake one that you've got with that thing and the boy. So I was like, dude, this is not what you and I agreed on. So Axel goes. He doesn't speak to Roxas at all because he doesn't want to disrupt that friendship. He meets up with Shion. Shion actually found out a little bit more about her origin because she was snooping in the organization's computer room and knew what she was going to be used for. So that's part of the reason why she left. And what the organization was truly planning. So she technically is only the third member to know the organization's true goal, I think. Anyway, she sees Axel in Twilight Town. Axel hunts her down. And she says to Axel, don't go easy on me. Do not hold back. Just, if you're here to take me, go full force. Because I won't hold back either. Axel, at this point, emotionally, is like, what's your problem? You both seem to think you can do whatever you like, and I'm sick of it. So you're coming back with me, whether you like it or not. We don't get to see the bite. We don't get to see the fighting at all. Not one bit. It's a sad thing. Anyway, Axel walks back into the castle. I wouldn't say near death. I would probably say due to mere exhaustion, he collapses in the entrance of it. Saïx is there, I think, or Xemnas, and picks up Shion, takes her away, and begins the final preparations. Roxas then finds out what Axel did, and he's finally pissed. So he's like, no, I don't like where this is going. So he then slowly finds out more of his origin, who he is, where he's come from, and everything else, and he can't believe it. He then meets up with Shion in Twilight Town, the clock tower to be precise. She tells Roxas nearly everything. She actually transforms into Sora to show that she's ready for her fate. She's now fully, I would assume, switched on to the organization's plan, so like they've overridden her true personality with this one that they've dreamt up. The two of them fight. She goes through different forms, and eventually Roxas beats her. There is an emotional side to this as well, causing Shion to finally die. And what happens is the consequences of her death means her mere existence doesn't exist. Any memories that Roxas would have of her is gone. Same thing with Riku. Riku even starts forgetting her once she's gone. Roxas then acquires the ability to wield not one but then two Keyblades because Shion held a part of Sora's ability. And the majority of her memories that she attained, a part of it went back to Sora, but the remainder went into Roxas. So Roxas now is the only person left with the remainder of Sora's memories. Roxas then comes to a decision. He decides to fully betray the organization and chooses to more or less set Kingdom Hearts free, because that's what Shion wanted to do. So Roxas then leaves, but then ends up coming back. He slays waves after waves of Heartless, going to, get back in. He actually even defeats Saïx before he even leaves the organizations fully, before he even leaves. And he speaks to Axel one last time, which we do see in Kingdom Hearts 2's cutscenes. But when he comes back, he slays a load of Heartless. He's at the skyscraper, or the memory skyscraper at least, and he sees more Heartless that he kills. He then sees Riku, and he and Riku work together in slaying the Heartless. Ironically enough, the two Keyblades that Roxas ends up wielding is the Oblivion Keyblade and the Oathkeeper. These two Keyblades actually symbolise Sora's friends. The Oblivion is Riku, and the Oathkeeper is Kairi. Now, Riku has already accepted the darkness in his heart, meaning that he's able to command darkness a little bit more better now, and he's able to do a few things. But he's not fully going to use it. He's just going to go at half power, let's put it like that. Roxas kicks his ass, beats him completely. And this is where Riku taps into the full power. He says, look, I'm going to give it my all now. We're done playing this child's game here. We are going to the next level. So, next level it is. Riku taps into the power of darkness fully and gives into it. Not like he's succumbed, but he allows the power of darkness to envelop. he transforms back into Ansem, the Seeker of Darkness, but he's in control, not Ansem. Got it? Cool. He accepts it. He then knocks Roxas unconscious, disappears. Riku hides his identity and says, Diz, during my time when I was facing him, he says he could feel Sora. Diz turns around and says, oh, he told you how he felt, did he? It's preposterous, and nobody can't feel a thing. Roxas is then dragged away out of the organisation's world, unable to uphold the promise, which was to stop Xemnas, and was left in a digital Twilight Town. 7 days left of his summer vacation, 7 days until he and Sora come back together, and 7 days until Sora's journey can fully begin. That technically is the end of it. That's the end of 358. Getting a bit tricky. Well, it's not tricky, but it's a little bit of a pain. So yeah, mainly though there was a few things implemented. So a few things did change in the gameplay because it was on the Nintendo DS. You used the stylus to not perform magic or anything, but you used the stylus to do certain things, to figure out puzzles and whatnot, I guess. But also you were able to organise certain things. Certain things were done. You had different keyblades that you can choose and so on. There was actually a multiplayer as well for this. So this was the only Kingdom Hearts game besides Birth by Sleep that had a multiplayer where you and other people could play as other members of the organisation, or Sora, or Riku, or Donald, or Goofy, or Mickey, and you could go out and do the organisation missions all over again. That was in the story, or boss monsters, depending on what you wanted to do. And basically there was a ranking system as well. So yeah, that's generally it, I get. I mean, most people kind of liked it, other people didn't like it, but this was re-released as a movie during 1.5. So in Kingdom Hearts 1.5, you could watch this, I think, as a movie, and Coded was the other one that you can watch as a film too. So yeah, that was generally it. Trying to see now. So we've gone over Coded, we've gone over 358 by 2 days. So I'm pretty sure it would be Birth by Sleep would be next, wouldn't it? So that was 2010. When was Coded out? Not Coded, sorry, 358. 2009, yeah, so 2010, Birth by Sleep. So we are getting ever much more closer now to the end. I would say at this point, forget what you know to an extent, but not yet. Organisation wanted to have 13 vessels, you know, 13 people to regain their hearts. That's the story that the organisation was told, because they didn't have hearts. In Birth by Sleep, we roughly get to meet the same people again, but they're obviously in different circumstances, in different positions, and the story will show you the origins of where the Xehanort that ran both the organisation and was the Heartless version, we get to see where this man's origin technically begins, and who he truly really is, and what was the goal of him during the events of Birth by Sleep. So that's what we'll be going over next time as we get ever more closer. I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. So don't forget to leave a comment, a like down below. What else is there? Oh yeah, don't forget to subscribe as well. And there's a little bell notification icon as well on there. Click on that to receive updates of more when these videos are coming out. Once again, I hope you guys have enjoyed. See you guys later.